Chattars. Welcome, chat. I have missed thee, sweet, sweet chattars. How y'all doing? Clean shavars? Absolutely, man. Welcome back, folks. Welcome to another HealthyGamerGG stream. My name is Dr. Alok Kanoja. I'm a psychiatrist practicing in Boston. And just a reminder that everything we do on stream is intended to be for educational purposes only. Nothing is intended to be taken as medical advice, chattars. I've missed you guys. And one other thing is that if you guys do have a licensed mental health or physical health concern, please go see a licensed professional. So, welcome back, chat. I've missed you guys. So we wanted to fill you guys in now that we're done on what we've been working on. So we have a couple of super secret projects. I love you guys too. Disclaimers. Were you all ready for it? Was it good for you? Is that gray hair that you see? Undoubtedly. Twitch is aging me. No, seriously, it's been a lot of work. So we're gonna share with you guys what we've been working on. So I just wanted to kind of take a step back. And first of all, thank you guys very much for everything that y'all have done to support us here at Healthy Gamer. In terms of just showing up, viewing things, being involved in our community. A couple years ago, I started streaming on Twitch because I found that people would reach out to me for help and that they would frequently say the problems would be shared amongst a lot of people. So I found myself in my office every single day sort of saying the same stuff, explaining the basics of are you mentally ill? Is this a clinical depression, or are you unhappy and lack purpose in life? Those are distinct entities. And so I worked with a lot of young people who were sort of lost. We sort of started out kind of working with gamers and under the premise of video game addiction. But what we really found is that people who play too many video games have, that's a symptom of a broader problem. Certainly there are features of neuroscientific features of addiction with people who play too many video games. There's absolutely that component. You can definitely call it an illness if you want to. But what I really found is that a lot of people were looking for direction, looking for help, and looking to understand themselves. And so when we started streaming, it was all about sort of having these public conversations that I had over and over and over again, and this idea that we can learn from each other. That the mental health problems that we struggle with are not they're not so unique. Each person is unique, but that our mind works a particular way. The challenges that we face tend to be shared with other people. And so we sort of started this concept of AOE healing. I mean, we didn't invent the concept of AOE healing, but we started, envisioning or encapsulating an organization, or I guess we should say encapsulating this concept of AOE healing. And so then what happened is we started our coaching program because a lot of people wanted to work with Dr. K, and I can't work with thousands of people, right? I just can't. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I have maybe 30 to 50 patients at a given time. And so, if I spend, 6 months or a year working with everyone over the course of my lifespan, I can work with maybe 1,000 people. And so then the next question becomes, what is happening? Why is everyone... Okay, welcome back. AOE subbing? Was there a gifted subs? Did I miss that? Thank you very much if somebody gifted subs. Hype Train. Sweet, thank you guys very much for supporting us. We'll get to that in just a second. Thank you guys very much. So, then we started our coaching program. And the idea that there was can I teach people some of the methodologies that I use? Can we help people? And it turns out that the answer appears to be yes. So we launched our coaching program about a year ago, and we've had probably around 4,000 people go through it at this point, and we're seeing really, really good results. And so even if Healthy Gamer, if something catastrophic happened and we shut down tomorrow, I think this is what our mission is. And I'm so thrilled that something that we've done here together through streaming together, through communities, through y'all supporting each other on subreddit, through gifting subs and dodging subs, to like, training 60 people from our community who are our coaches. And those people, like, a lot of them who sort of may not have had other options in terms of employment and things like that. And like, I'm thrilled that we've been able to give people like meaningful work, and thrilled that those people have helped thousands of people and more than I ever could in my life. The downside is that sometimes with the coaching program, people are sort of lacking some of the expertise or the knowledge. They have the skills of helping people understand themselves. But what we're really missing from our community is like a more in-depth exploration of like the knowledge that I have. Right. So a lot of people will ask me questions, which is great. And then like sometimes we'll teach things on Twitch and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think the challenge that we run into is that like the way that I work with an individual person is difficult to share because it's like complex. So when someone comes into my office, I try to mentally assess them and try to think about, okay, is this someone who has a clinical illness and needs like Dr. Alok Kanogia, or is this someone who's like doesn't understand what to do in their life and needs like direction? Or is this someone who wants to like understand themselves better? And what do I draw on? Do I draw on neuroscience? Do I draw on the addiction psychiatrist? Do I draw on the psychotherapist? Do I draw on a particular meditation technique or like an Eastern philosophy, or like even more advanced techniques of like yoga and meditation aligned at like cultivating particular spiritual faculties? Like, what do I draw on? And so what I realized is like, that's actually what a lot of people in our community want, right? Like people want more. And the problem is that like things like Twitch and YouTube are fantastic. So I love Twitch because I get to interact with you guys. Like it's awesome. But we pay the price of interacting with y'all with sort of like it's disorganized, right? So how do you navigate through the history of a Twitch stream? It's very difficult. And so ultimately what we decided to do was like try to figure out, okay, how can I duplicate, or how can we duplicate like my knowledge base and make it accessible in a meaningful and comprehensive way to our community? And this is what we came up with. And this is what our super secret project that I've been slaving away and turning my hair gray for the last, God knows, I don't even know. Okay. So this is what we've been working on. Okay. So let me try to zoom out a little bit. So this is what we've built. And it's still being built. So the thing is, we're starting with 3 sort of like buckets of stuff. So how do I understand depression? How do I understand anxiety? And how do I understand like meditation? And for people who are interested in learning more in a comprehensive way, this is what we've put together. So let's kind of go through it. So the first thing is that like, this is why sort of a YouTube playlist kind of doesn't work, because this isn't actually how I think about things, right? And this is actually the problem, is that a lot of people will go see a psychiatrist or therapist and they'll get asked like these same like 15 questions, like, are you suicidal? Are you hallucinating? Do you have problems with sleep? Do you have problems with interest? Do you have problems with guilt? Do you have problems with this? Like, medicine is so protocolized, it's not very individualized. And the more that we sort of become cookie cutter, insurance-based billing crap, I have to ask people if they've got skin problems, if they've got, I make more money as a doctor the more useless questions I ask you. The more you pay 50 minutes for an appointment, and the more time I spend asking you questions about like reviewing all of your organ systems. Do you have liver problems? Are you jaundiced? Like, the insurance company will pay me more if I ask every patient who comes into my office if they're jaundiced. But it's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of mine. So there's like this huge problem with sort of how medicine, like the compensation structures within medicine. So what I've tried to do is actually like offer you guys how I think about another human being. This is literally the process in my mind. So let's start. So we're going to ask you guys, like, chat, quick poll. Which one do you guys want to explore? Meditation, anxiety, or depression? Jaundiced. Poll? Can we get a poll? See, this is why we built these 3. Do you all see, chat? Because like different people want different things. You see that? It's individualized. So this is the joy. Okay, so we're going to start with anxiety. So this is the first thing, right? So like this is the problem with our community. I want you guys to just think about this for a second. Let's think about it together. So here I show up on stream, and then I'll ask you guys, what do y'all want? And so 49% of people want anxiety. And the problem is that like actually half of y'all are not getting what you want. This is literally why we built this. Because anytime I stream, something is left out, right? There's someone that we don't actually like who ends up not getting what they want. So this is why we did this, okay? So first thing about this is that this is supposed to be navigated by you. Like you get to pick like what you do. So we start off with an introduction and a medical disclaimer, right? Then we'll orient you with how to do this module, and then we kind of go to the module overview. So I explain a little bit about how the module works. So what are the different features of the module? Okay? So we're going to follow the blue lines. Then I explain Anxiety 101. First thing to understand in anxiety is that there's a clinical anxiety, right? There's an illness. And then there's like just simply the fact that we all as human beings have anxiety. And so which track do you guys want to go down, chat? Clinical or non-clinical? So this has been, so the other thing that I got to say is, okay, everyone wants non. Maybe, okay. So this is the other thing, is like, I think, you know why I think that this, like, I made this because of video games. Because when I think about a video game, y'all remember the sphere grid from FF10? So like what I realized is we need to make like a sphere grid for understanding yourself. And there are different domains and different competencies. Okay? That's what this is. It's inspired by video games. And it's like, if game design people approached mental health, I think this is what they would come up with. Anyway, so y'all want non-clinical, so we'll go down that way first. So the first thing to understand is that there are things called anxiety disorders, and there's treatment. There's things like the neuroscience of anxiety. Anxiety comes from our body. I know we said we're going to do non-clinical, but that's why I'm going to push this aside in a second. So this is the kind of stuff that's in clinical anxiety, right? So we also have the DSM diagnoses. We also have rebound anxiety, which has to do with substances. And down the clinical track, we have some stuff about Ayurveda, herbs, dietary guidance. So let's go down the non-clinical track. So then we get to things like features of cognitive anxiety. So if we think about more from like a meditative or yogic perspective, like how does anxiety manifest in the mind? What are the features of it? And if we understand the features of cognitive anxiety, we can actually start to gain control over it, like irrespective of what your diagnosis is. So just to give you guys an example, in features of cognitive anxiety, we talk about how anxiety is the future-focused mind. Literally, you can't be anxious if your mind is in the present. Maybe you can a little bit from physiologic anxiety, so that's a caveat. But generally speaking, if we think about the nature of anxiety, you're thinking about a consequence in the future, right? I'm anxious. Okay, what are you anxious about? I'm anxious about my grades. I'm anxious about COVID. I'm anxious about the future. And some people may even say things like, oh, I'm anxious about the past. Like this thing happened yesterday. I went to this party and I was dressed the wrong way. But even if you think about anxiety in the past, what that person is concerned about is that the future consequences of a past action. So it's all about the future. So then we can think a little bit about, okay, if we can step out of the future focused mind, you can actually like literally not be anxious. You can't be anxious. If your mind is focused in the present, can't be anxious. And this is where we sort of discovered this as gamers, right? So we discovered this because when we play a video game, like what happens to our anxiety? We're focused in the game. We're pooning noobs or getting pooned. And in that case, then we're not anxious anymore. And then the problem arises that when we stop playing the game, our mind starts going back to the future, and then the anxiety returns. So we explained some of these basic features of cognitive anxiety that has nothing to do with a diagnosis, right? It's not like you don't need medication for that. That's just like literally how the faculty of anxiety works in your mind. So next thing, pwned, whatever this is. How do you pronounce this, chat? How do you pronounce that? Is that not pwned? Pwned? However you pronounce that is what I'm talking about. So then there are other things that we dig into, like thought loops. So like a lot of people have thought loops, and like thought loops isn't a diagnosis. It's not necessarily something that you need medication for. But to understand like what is the nature of a thought loop? Where does it come from? Why does it happen? What do we do with thought loops? Like what happens in our mind? Okay? So the other thing is that we're going to vote in a second, and I'll give you guys a preview of like what the full topic, okay? So then we get to some of the cool stuff, all right? So now we're going to move up a little bit. Gotta zoom out just a touch. I guess I can't. Okay. So then we can go over here, and then there's like another branch point. It's choose your own adventure, chat. Open world. Okay? It's an open world educational program. So responses to anxiety. This is one of my favorite videos. It's like, what do we normally do with anxiety? Which is interesting because we don't really think about it, right? What are the ways in which your mind normally responds to anxiety? Sometimes you distract yourself. Sometimes you argue with yourself, right? You try to tell yourself, oh, it's stupid to feel anxious. I shouldn't feel anxious. It's illogical. And then there's your anxiety. And sometimes when you fight with yourself, sometimes you win and other times you lose. And so we're going to learn things like if you try to fight with your anxiety, it just makes it worse over time. That you can fight with it every single day. And then like some days you win and some days you lose. But like even if you win or lose, what happens the next day? The anxiety just comes back. So we have to understand what naturally we do in our mind in anxiety. Like what are the different ways that we respond to it? And then we've got another choose your own adventure. Okay, so now you've got a couple of choices. So after understanding the basics of anxiety, you can understand the responses, and then we can dig more into how anxiety is learned behavior. And I know this sounds weird, but like I want you guys to think about this for a second. A lot of people have anxiety. Are they all anxious about the same thing? Absolutely not. So let's be scientists for a second. Why is one brain anxious about one thing and another brain anxious about another thing? Right? Where does that anxiety, like I want you all to really appreciate that your neurons are wired in a particular way to make you anxious about a particular thing. So once we understand where the root of anxiety is, then we can start dealing with it. So we're also going to teach you guys Vedic psychology. So like this is sort of the Eastern or yogic or meditative model of the mind. It's very different from the Western model of the mind. Was developed very differently. So if we think about the way that Western concepts of mind were developed, I'm going to go academic on y'all for a second. So if we think about Sigmund Freud, like a lot of our concepts of the mind are based in Freud. And what did Freud use to discover what the mind is? What Freud looked at was he had conversations with people. And by having conversations with people, he sort of concluded certain things about the mind. The problem is that like having a conversation, like how close are the words that you say to what is going on in your head? Huge gap, right? So you can listen to someone, but it's not like an X-ray for the mind. So the biggest problem with Western psychology is that the instruments that we have used to develop our psychological theories are fundamentally handicapped because we have very low quality information. We have no thing like a blood test or an X-ray or a CAT scan for the mind. So we just use words. And don't get me wrong, you can get really sophisticated at using words, but you will never reach what the yogis use to develop their theory of mind, which is not talking to another human being. It's refining and paying attention to all of their own thoughts and the function of their mind even. So that model we'll explain to you guys in Vedic psychology. So you can kind of like, it's sort of a choose your own adventure. You can go to responses, you can go to Vedic psychology, get an Eastern perspective. And then we sort of wind up with sort of understanding that anxiety is a learned behavior. And then we're going to go through a couple of different attributes of the mind and anxiety. So one is, for example, that tension feeds anxiety. So if you think about anxiety, there's a certain program in your mind that makes you anxious. And the more energy you dump into the mind, the worse the anxiety becomes. So you guys may have experienced this where like the more you fight against your anxiety, the worse it gets. Right? Like if you fight against it, it like comes back even harder. And so we're going to teach you a little bit about how to decrease the energy of the mind. Next thing is feeding the beast. So now the other problem is that if we don't fight anxiety, what else do? We give into it, right? If I'm anxious about asking my boss for a promotion, and I'm afraid that he's going to think I'm greedy if I ask for a promotion, then that anxiety, sometimes I may not ask them. So I just give in to the anxiety, right? The problem is that if I give in to the anxiety, it actually gets stronger. Because 3 months later, when I think I deserve a promotion again, like it's going to be the same cycle, except this time I've given into it once. So now we've got a problem because if I fight against the anxiety, it gets stronger. And if I give in to the anxiety, it gets stronger. So then we get to solutions, right? So, okay, how do we deal with anxiety? So we're going to walk you guys through that. We're going to walk you through how to deal with some scars and all that kind of stuff. So then, this is a really common question that we get, which is like, okay, should I see a coach or should I see a therapist? So we have a video about that. And then, so that's the anxiety track. the non-clinical track, and then the clinical track we'll go over just very quickly. What if the boss actually thinks you're greedy? Beautiful. Then you come on over here to this video. Karma far. That, as a human being, you cannot control the outcomes of your actions. You can only control your actions. You can't control what your boss thinks, nor should you try. If you think you deserve a promotion, let him think you're greedy. But if you think you deserve it, you should go for it. Right? Let him think you're greedy. What's wrong with that? No biggie. Not karma farts, karma far. F-A-L. It's actually an ara. It's like an la, ara. Got it? Easy clap. Okay. What we're doing today is I'm showing you guys where I've been. Orienting you guys. So then down the clinical track, we sort of talk a little bit about what is an anxiety disorder. We're going to cover some of the most common anxiety disorders. Touch a little bit on OCD down here. And then we're also going to talk about other things that are like, like on the frontiers of science, like the anxious personality. Like some people are more prone to have high levels of neuroticism. And so that's not a discrete illness. It's not something that happens to you. It has something to do with the way that you're wired. So we'll explain that stuff to you. We'll also cover the neuroscience of anxiety. And then we'll talk about physiologic anxiety. So this is one of the big reasons that I think that anxiety is getting worse in this country. So not just the country, the world. So if you think about, when you have anxiety, like who do you go see? You see a therapist. And what are therapists usually trained in? The vast majority of therapists are not trained in any kind of physical medicine, which I think is silly because anxiety is not just a mental problem, it's a physiologic problem, right? That your body and your mind are connected. And when I work with people with anxiety, we do a lot of stuff on the body because ultimately that's like 50% of anxiety. So I think part of the reason that anxiety is getting worse in this country is because 80 to 90% of our trained professionals have no training in physiology whatsoever. And so essentially what we're doing is half of our tools to deal with anxiety are being left by the wayside and not integrated. So things like breath. So what's the relationship between your breath and your mind? And how can you understand that to help control your anxiety? So little tidbits, like for example, did you guys know that when people are doing studies on anxiety, the way that they induce anxiety in a controlled environment, this is an interesting question. Does anyone know what is the best way to induce anxiety in someone in a controlled scientific environment? Yeah, right? So it's actually to breathe 7.5% CO2. So even hyperventilation, good thought. So what they'll do is they'll stick a gas mask on you with a CO2 concentration of 7.5%. Makes people fucking anxious. It's like really uncomfortable. Crazy. Right? So we're going to learn a lot about breath and the mind and the relationship and how to use that to help your anxiety. Then we go down to treatment. So this is also where when I have someone in my office, there are a lot of basic principles of treatment that I'll teach them over and over and over again. And I want you all to think about this for a second. When you go to a doctor's office or therapist's office, a lot of it is going to be individualized to you, but a lot of it is going to be pretty generic, right? Like I say the same stuff to all of my patients. Like if someone wants medication for anxiety, I'm going to talk about the same damn things. Like these are the options, these are the side effects, these are the choices. Then I'll get to the individual stuff, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that's generic. So this also, just to note, guys, this is not unfortunately going to be free. So it's required a lot of investment in terms of time and energy. We have developers working on this. It's required a lot of effort, hundreds of pages of written scripts. We hired a production crew and everything. So we are going to charge for this. And part of the reason for that is going to be because it's expensive to make. And our goal is not to stop here. So a lot of people are going to want, advanced courses on meditation, which we have mapped out. And we just want to continue building this kind of stuff. So the other thing is to think a little bit about anytime you go to see a doctor, this is sort of like an orientation before you even go see a therapist or a medical professional so that you guys have a lot of stuff. It's like a guide before you even go in. And if you guys get this from an actual professional, in an appointment, like it's going to cost you way more. So next question is, we're going to go over some treatment for anxiety, and then we're going to get to our Ayurveda portion. So in the Ayurveda portion, we have our introduction to Ayurveda. So we explain what Ayurveda is. We talk specifically about Ayurveda for anxiety. We're going to tell you guys about herbs for anxiety. And then we're going to tell you guys sort of this is cool. We're going to talk about brain gut stuff, right? So this is like a lot of the more technical stuff about how there are certain kinds of bacteria that will actually produce neurotransmitters for you that will like reduce your anxiety. So if you look at people who have high levels of anxiety, they have particular kinds of bacteria in their gut. And then people who have low levels of anxiety actually have two different bacteria. And so we have a very symbiotic relationship with bacteria. And it's been interesting because, 50 years ago, if you went to a medical professional or a scientist and you said, hey, there's this ancient system of medicine called Ayurveda, and they believe that the first line treatment for mental health issues is dietary change, you'd get laughed out of the room as being like completely pseudoscientific or non-scientific. Turns out that the Ayurveda folks actually have been right for thousands of years. And now that medicine is catching up and science is actually catching up, we're beginning to see a lot of these other things. So in Ayurveda, first line treatment for mental health issues is actually dietary guidance. So modify your diet and you'll change your mental health. And it turns out that one of the main mechanisms through which diet alters mental health is likely that diet changes your gut bacteria. Your gut bacteria will then start to do things like produce different kinds of neurotransmitter precursors. So I don't know if you guys know this, but first line treatment for medication for anxiety is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So these are medications like Prozac or fluoxetine. So these boost the serotonin level in the brain. So the question becomes, why is the serotonin level low to begin with? And so in my experience, when I work with patients, I may start them on a medication that increases their serotonin, but then I put them on the right kind of Ayurvedic diet. And the ones who are on the right kind of Ayurvedic diet, it's my belief, so clinically, this is something I'm very confident in. The ones who follow the diet, I pull the medication off in 6 months to a year and they're fine. They don't even need the medication. The ones who don't follow the diet are much more likely to need medication, ongoing. And so my personal, the best way I can make sense of that clinical observation is that these dietary changes are selecting for the right kind of bacteria that are doing the right stuff in your brain. Okay? Absolutely. So we're going to explain all that. What does the diet consist of? It's complicated. And we're going to go into detail. This is why we're doing it this way, right? So this is the problem with doing stuff on Twitch is that all of you guys have different questions. Oh shit, I want to understand dietary guidance in Ayurveda. Okay. So it's an in-depth thing. So you want to eat cooked vegetables. You want to eat root vegetables. You want to be very careful about your intake of cruciferous vegetables and other things like spinach. Cooked spinach is better. Certain kinds of fruit. You want citrus fruits. You want to avoid dry fruits. There are all kinds of very specific things. You want, to try to avoid leavened breads. So flatbreads are okay. Stuff with yeast, not so good. Lemon is good, right? So there are a lot of specific things. We're going to teach you all about your Ayurvedic dosha too. Okay, so that's the anxiety module. What do you guys want to do now? So we've got a couple options, chat. We can do viewer call-ins and questions. We can continue going over the modules. What do y'all want? Meditation module? Okay, let's do the... Oh, love it. Love it, chat. Okay, so first thing... When will this be available? I believe 56 days and some number of minutes. So our programming team is working hard on it. We're done with filming all the content. Okay, so there's a wait list there. See this. Okay. Secret project that has never been leaked ever. Okay. Oh, looks like it's busted. Where's the countdown? GG. It was working earlier, but all right. Okay. So, 0 days till it's out. GG. It's released. Oh my god, surprise. So guys, this is why we have to, because we gotta like actually pay people who are competent to do this stuff, right? Like, we're trying to do this shit with duct tape and shoestring, and like, at some point, I can be as brilliant as I can, but like, we need, so thankfully we're like finally hiring people to like take care of this stuff properly. And that's exactly why. Okay, so let's go over meditation. So I love this because in meditation, there's so much stuff that I want to share with you guys about meditation, but it's so damn hard to do over Twitch or YouTube because like we teach sort of the same meditation techniques, right? And let me just pull this up actually. So now this is my current version, okay? So I'll just do this. So just so you guys know, like, this is what we're layering in. So for all these videos, there are going to be particular meditation techniques that we teach at different points. Okay? So I guess we'll just kind of look at some of the, we'll use this one. So some of these things we teach on stream. The problem is that they're actually advanced meditation techniques that for those of you who regularly meditate on stream, like we can't really teach you the advanced technique because there may be a bunch of people that are absolutely new. And so we have to start with the basics. So one of the things that I find frustrating about sort of like teaching stuff on Twitch is that like I can't really get to the fun stuff. Like, sure, it's fun, it's great, I love it, but like I want to teach you guys more advanced techniques on meditation. The problem is that because of the nature of viewership and like randos kind of coming in and out, like totally cool, you're welcome if you're a new rando, welcome to the stream, we love having you here. But for people who are showing up more regularly and want exposure to more advanced concepts, these things are going to leave the new people in the dust. So when we think a little bit about why this module was built, it's because we can go through a lot of the like more detailed stuff. So I'm really thrilled that I can finally do this because I've been waiting to do this for a long time. This is when we get into the real cult stuff. My other option, if COVID hadn't happened, I would have just done a retreat and, you guys could come and y'all could join the cult. And then we would have done all this kind of stuff there. But alas, we're just going to teach it to everyone instead of being inducted into the secret knowledge. There is secret knowledge, by the way. Okay, so start with a module overview. Oh, this is a big one. What is meditation? Because this is something that's really not understood well. Like, people don't even know what meditation is. Because people come in and they'll say, like, oh, I'm bad at meditation. You're not bad at meditation. You just weren't taught properly. Right? So this is something important to understand when it comes to learning meditation or learning anything. Is more of the fault on the student's end or more of the fault on the teacher's end? So part of the problem is that in our society today, we've had an explosion of mindfulness. The problem is that mindfulness is just one slice of meditation. It's a tiny part of meditation. And so a lot of times what will happen is if you go to a certified meditation teacher, what they'll do is they'll teach you their technique. Right? So that's the tradition that they grew up in. So they say, this is the way to meditate. And the problem is that why are there thousands of traditions? And that's because there are thousands of people and not the same thing works for the same people. It's just like cuisine. Like not everyone eats the same food. There are different foods that different people like and are suited to different people. Totally fine. So we're going to get into what is meditation, what's been misunderstood about meditation, the history of meditation, different styles of meditation. So this is where like some people love sitting there and focusing on their breath. Some people love mindfulness and like just watching their thoughts. Other people want like more different kinds of experiences. So some people are very inquisitive with their meditation and they want to like do something like learn to follow their breath and figure something out. What is the sound of the ocean? What is the sound of the breath? Where does the breath go? They're inquisitive techniques that for those of you who are a little bit more curious and don't like to sit around and do the same damn thing every day, you can actually like do this technique and sort of figure things out about yourself. We're also going to teach advanced meditation. So we teach Nadi Shuddhi a lot on stream, and we're going to teach 2 advanced techniques that are supposed to be done after Nadi Shuddhi. So this is the level 1 technique, level 2 technique, and level 3 technique. Okay? And then, let me just go back to this one because I find this distracting. Okay. So then we're going to get to the science of meditation. What does meditation do in your brain? What does it do in your body? It's not just neuroscience because I'm a medical doctor. So we're not just going to be talking about the brain. We're going to be talking about physiology as well. Very important. And then we get into the metaphysics of the meditation. So like we're going to talk about the science and what we know scientifically, then we're going to talk about the hokey stuff, right? This weird like pseudo quantum physics, like nature of the universe is consciousness, like all that weird stuff that no one talks about anymore. It's bizarre. But it's like we just sort of like decided that we're going to take this tiny slice of meditation and like, I know it sounds weird, but we stopped talking about enlightenment at some point, right? Like no one talks about enlightenment anymore, which is really, really crazy if you actually go and study meditation, because the whole damn point is enlightenment. But there's no app for that. So like, I think we've lost a lot by sort of ignoring this crap. I'm not saying you have to believe it, but I'm saying if you want to understand meditation, you should at least understand what these people have been saying. Like Buddha and all of the traditions of mindfulness grew out of Buddha trying to help people become enlightened. But people don't talk about that anymore. It's bizarre. It's like the central goal that Buddha shared with the entire world, or all of his teachers, is just like conveniently ignored. It's like, what happened? Okay, so we're going to talk about that stuff, right? We're going to introduce that knowledge to you guys. You don't have to believe it, but just understand it. You can discard it if you want to. It's really irrelevant. But now we get to the fun stuff. So now we have another branch point. Specialization. Choose your class. Prestige class unlocked. The Manaspada. Pada means path. So this is the path of the mind. The Atman Pada. Atman means soul. This is the path of the self. Sukha Pada. The pathway to happiness or contentment. The Jnana Pada, which is the pathway of knowledge. And the Siddhi Pada, the pathway of accomplishment. Which path do you guys want to do first? Poll? Chat? Poll? Okay. GG. No poll. All right. It looks like people want Siddhi. Okay. Looks like our stream mods are GG. Okay, no problem. All right, so we're going to start with Siddhi Pada. That's what I saw the most. All right. So the first thing is that, to explain these a little bit further, so like people can use meditate. Oh, there we go. So people can use meditation to understand different things, right? Like there are different goals of meditation. So for people like who want to understand the nature of how your mind functions, because the yogis learned a lot about like how the mind works. There's the Manaspada. There's a lot about knowledge in meditation. So like, okay. So we'll go through each of these, okay? So we'll do, we'll start with the Siddhi Pada, and then we'll go down the Atman Pada. So the Siddhi Pada, oh, I love this, okay. So, at Healthy Gamer, we talk about one thing, which is that you know what you need to do, but you just can't do it. So like, how the hell does that work? So if you think about people who meditate, and when I teach people stuff, like the reason that I'm good at my job is because I teach them how to manifest their intention. That's what the Siddhi Pada is all about. We all have intentions, but our intentions are not made manifest. Like, right? We can't bring them to fruition in the world. Why the hell not? Like, this is not a complicated question. It's actually really, really simple. It requires like very careful study to understand what is the way that you can take an intention and make it manifest in the real world. If we think about starting Healthy Gamer, and it's like, how did that happen, right? I had this idea. I was like, man, these people need help. I got to do something about that. And I want you guys to appreciate that I didn't actually like make Healthy Gamer, like y'all made Healthy Gamer, but I still have to put something out there for you guys to come back and like meet me with, right? So Healthy Gamer is not about me, it's about you. So how can you understand that? How can you put something out there? Because so many of us are paralyzed by like being afraid of the outcomes of my actions. Like, what if it doesn't work? What if I ask him out and he says no? What if I ask her out and she says no? So there are so many things in life that we never even try because we're afraid of the outcome. And so a big part of successfully creating Healthy Gamer was forgetting about what will happen. Like, it's not about what will happen. Like, maybe it's a complete train wreck. I was thinking it would be a huge success if after 1 year of streaming, we had on average 100 concurrent viewers. That would have been a huge success in my mind. And so like what we did at Healthy Gamer was like, we didn't start out trying to be successful. Hell, we're still not trying to be successful. What we're trying to do is like, we have a central compass in our mind, which is to help you guys. And like, when that's your central compass, like hopefully things work. And so anyway, so this is a central concept to understanding like how to be successful in life, which is karma far. The central concept is that as a human being, you're entitled to your actions, but not the outcomes of your actions. So as you let go of the outcomes of your actions, you become liberated, more productive, and more successful. There's a big problem that we have in society is that we all think about goals. What's your goal? What do you want to be when you grow up? Where do you want to be for 5 years from now? What do you want to accomplish? Wrong questions. We need to stop thinking about goals. What's your target weight? Oh, I want to lose weight. Forget about losing weight. It's impossible to lose weight. You can't lose weight. Teach me, chat. How do I lose weight? What happens? How do I lose weight? Teach me. Eating less is not losing weight. Eating is a verb. I can eat less, but losing weight is different. Discipline? No. Discipline is not a thing you can do. It is not a verb. Exercise? Absolutely. So this is the problem, right? Everyone is focused on losing weight. No one is focused on exercising. Reframe your goals to actions. You can't find a job. It is impossible to find a job. You can apply for a job. You can update your resume, but you can't find a job. Finding the job is out of your hands. And the problem is that we get so concerned with things that are fundamentally not in our control that it's paralyzing. So learn how to reframe your goals to actions. Right? Think about the action. Devote yourself to the action. This whole thing is all about an action. Dr. K had a wild idea, and everyone at Healthy Gamer has been stressed out because of me. Because I was like, hey, I want to make this thing. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, I want to make this thing. And so everyone has been so supportive in the HG, inner circle, our cult inner circle. They have like let me make this thing. They've been so supportive. They figured out like how to get it done. I was like, this is what I want to make. And I was like, this is what I think will help people. So do we know that this is going to help people? We have no idea. Like maybe you guys will watch this, you'll get through video 2, you're like, this is boring. And then it's just a complete flop. We don't know. We don't know. Right? We have no idea. But we just do it. You do what you think you need. You do what is the right thing to do. Let the outcome be the outcome. Is it successful? Who knows? Is it not successful? I don't know. I can't read the future, but I'm going to make it anyway because I think it's what helps people. So this mentality will be represented in these 2 videos. So then we're going to learn about the origin. Oh, this is great. The origin of motivation. What is motivation? Where does it come from? Where does motivation come from, chat? Can't read the future. What about dowsing? Good one. Good one, Alx802. What does that mean? No, like, this is stupid. Stupid. Okay, tell me how to find motivation, chat. It comes from within. What does that mean? I'm here. Teach me. Where within? Stomach? From a goal? Do you guys have goals? So that one person is saying goals. It comes from goals. Who here has a goal and is not motivated to do it? Desires? Who here wants something and is not motivated to get it? Needs? Who here needs something and is not motivated to do it? Right? So this is the whole problem with the self-help industry. No one understands where motivation comes from scientifically. Like very precisely, I will tell you guys in one sentence where motivation comes from. Motivation is not even a real thing. There's no Sanskrit word for motivation. The yogis who understood all of these subtle states of mind have words for all kinds of stuff. They have like 3 words for meditation, 4 or 5 words for meditation, different states of mind. They have no word for the word motivation. That's not a real thing. Motivation is an umbrella term that we use to encapsulate a bunch of different processes. So this is what I'm going to posit to you guys, okay? And if you guys want, this is the argument that I make in this video. That motivation, what we call motivation from the outside, is actually the ability to hold one thought in your head on the inside. that a focused mind is one that we view on the outside as motivation. That the difference between someone who's motivated and someone who's not motivated is the same difference between a light bulb and a laser beam. It is the concentration of the resource. And that a dispersed mind and a diffuse mind, a mind that thinks about a lot of different stuff, is not motivated. Whereas a mind that thinks about one thing will be very motivated. And if any of you guys have struggled with video game addiction, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. People say that people who play too many video games are not motivated. Incorrect. You have a ton of motivation. It's just in a way that your parents are unhappy with, or you're unhappy with. Holding one thought in your head. Think about how inspired people are on New Year's Day when they make a New Year's resolution to take care of themselves. They have that thought. It's central in their mind. Yeah, I'm going to go to the gym today. The next day they wake up, I'm going to go to the gym. You look at people who are disciplined, what do you see? On the inside, their mind is different from people who are undisciplined. They hold that thought in their mind. What about 2 months after the New Year's resolution? There are all kinds of other thoughts in there, right? They're not thinking about it. They're like, oh yeah, there's like that little thought pops up into the back of your head. Oh, I'm supposed to exercise today. And then what happens? Thought disappears. You start thinking about something else. The concentration of the mind on a single thought is the source of motivation. Absolutely. How? This is what we're going to teach you. Right? How do you hold one thought in your mind for a long period of time? How with ADHD? No big deal. We're going to teach you that too. Okay? So that's the origin of motivation. Then there are other things. If we want to make something manifest in the world, we need other things as well. We need Sangha, which is community. That's what you guys do here. Right? So if you guys look at our subreddit and stuff, there are like posts about like people on Discord like are really grateful for the other people. People get together, they clean their room. And like if you think about my goal is to have a clean room. How do people accomplish that? They like show up on Sunday apparently at 3 p.m. on our Discord for like a room cleaning like hour. Everyone hops on Discord and cleans together. That's the strength of community and manifestation. So, Shuddhi, cleansing. This is another big thing. So we're going to teach you guys. So there's like neuroscience and stuff sprinkled in. I'm going to share with you guys a really simple principle of neuroscience, which we cite in this lecture. So like literally, it is easier to accomplish things if your room is clean. Like there's overwhelming scientific evidence that is literally true. And the mechanism through which it works is fascinating. So your brain has two pulls on its attention. One is what's called a top-down attentional pull. So that's like comes from your cerebral cortices. So when you set out, you're like, I need to study for my test today. That's a top-down attentional pull. So it's like there's a part of your brain that's like, hey, we need to focus on this task today. Then you also have bottom-up attentional pulls. So you have all kinds of sensory stimuli that are going to pull at your attention. Okay, so if I'm walking, let's say I'm taking a walk with a friend of mine, and we're talking about how Magic Legends is a complete train wreck. And then as we're walking down the street, my cerebral cortices are engaged, and then he's telling me Magic Legends is awesome. I'm like, yeah, man, I know it's awesome, but it's a microtransaction mess. We're debating that, right? Top down. I tried to play it, chat. I tried. The idea behind the game is so brilliant. So brilliant. Anyway, I had high hopes. Maybe they'll fix it. We'll see. So, I'm walking down the street. We're talking about Magic Legends. And then I see a snake. What happens in my mind? The conversation about Magic Legends ends. And now I'm focused on the snake. Neuroscientifically, how did that happen? It's because my bottom-up attentional circuitry, which has been sort of like alt-tabbed out, right? I alt-tabbed out of it. I have a visual cortex that's integrating all of this stimuli, sees a snake, and it's like, hey, dumbass, there's a snake. Stop talking about Magic Legends. You could die. And I'm like, so we have this bottom-up circuitry, which is that our sensory organs are constantly scanning the environment. And that requires RAM. So when you have a dirty apartment, there are literally studies that have been done on this. When you have a dirty apartment or dirty desk or dirty space, it is hard to think because a portion of your brain is literally constantly scanning that crap. And the more stuff there is to scan, the less RAM is available for your top-down attentional circuitry, which makes you less productive at tasks. It's crazy, right? So thousands of years ago, yogis didn't understand any of this neuroscience. They just sort of noticed that when your place is unclean, when your mind is unclean, when your body is unclean, you will suck more at life. And that by cleaning things, you will actually get better at life. Buy more RAM? I don't think so, chat. I think you've got everything you've got. Then we're going to talk about Satya. So this is an example of a niyama, or personal observance. There are a lot of these. There are actually like 5 niyamas and 5 yamas, and we could talk about each one in theory, but we're focusing on one. So we're going to talk about truthfulness and how truthfulness makes you better at life. And so there are interesting mechanisms, right? So this is the exercise we're going to give you guys, which is to like go as long as you can without telling a lie. It's really fascinating what this does to your brain, right? The first thing that it does is it increases your awareness of the present moment, because this is what happens in all the mindfulness blogs and mindfulness videos. They're like, learn to live in the present. Like, be in the present and you'll be free. Even Dr. K, when he was talking about anxiety, was talking about, oh my God, learn to be free. Like, don't be in the future, be in the present. But how? How do you do that? How? The answer is don't tell a lie. See how long you can go without telling a lie. Because think about what that requires you to do. When you set that goal for your mind, it automatically reorganizes your mental efforts to pay attention to every single thing that you're saying. That is training, literally training your neuroscientific faculties to be aware in the present. So there are other things too, because once you start, how can I say this? Once you stop telling lies, or once you start the practice of truthfulness, it also changes your behavior. Because if you're not allowed to lie anymore, then you start to do things differently. And that's when your life starts changing. There's also some weird pseudo-spiritual, magical kind of stuff, but we're going to steer clear of that. I may mention it in the video. So there's interesting mechanistic reasons why this stuff works. So we go into that. That's the Siddhipada. Okay. Next is Atmanpada. So we're going to teach you what is the nature of true self. Who are you? Right? So are you your body? Are you your mind? If you're not your mind, then what are you? How do you discover that? Because it's really cool, right? Because a lot of our problems in life stem from our inappropriate identification with our mind. So if once you gain distance from your mind, if you guys think a little bit about, you'll maybe tell friends and stuff to take a step back after something bad happens in their life. And they're so caught up in things that we tell them, hey, learn to take a step back. Take a step back, bro. And then they do take a step back. The most common thing that I can remember from my life is when friends of mine would be going through breakups. And I'm like, dude, there are other fish in the sea, man. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. And so, how do you do that? How can you train yourself to take a step back so that when things don't go well in life, there's 2 problems. One is that something didn't go well. And then the second thing is the impact on you that something didn't go well. So if I get dumped by my girlfriend, that sucks, sure. But then there are all the mental crap that comes with being dumped and unlovable and I'll never find anyone and she was the only one for me and regret and all that crap. That has nothing to do with the actual getting dumped. That just has to do with what your mind does in response to getting dumped. So, what is the true self? Then we're going to give you guys a more practical view of Panchakosha, which is how can you think about the different layers of being? And if you want to be healthy, how can you think about all different layers of yourself? What's your physical self? What's your mental self? What's your emotional self? The energetic layer, the intellectual layer. And then how can you kind of optimize yourself? And then we're going to get into one of my favorite topics, confidence versus ego. So we're going to learn, a lot of people ask how do I become confident? Great question. We're going to teach you right here. Okay, so then we've got I see a lot of people posting about Jordan Peterson. I don't know what he has to do with this, but yeah, this has nothing to do with Jordan Peterson. I mean, I don't know if he says the same things, but the roots of this stuff is not Jordan Peterson. The roots of this stuff is yoga and meditation. So let's go to, what do y'all want to do first? Okay, what's next? Knowledge, sukha. Okay, we'll just go down the knowledge. So this is a relatively short one. So we're going to teach you guys about knowledge in the mind. And specifically, like, we're going to give you guys studying techniques and things like that here. So what is the nature? How do you learn? Like, what is the mechanism of learning? So it's bizarre. Like, it blows my mind that we don't teach this to people in school. It's sort of like we're giving you, like, you know, a set of plumber's tools, but we don't teach you what a wrench is or what a hammer is. And we're like, go fix that plumbing. Like, no one ever teaches you how to learn. Like, just think about it for a second. If I'm sitting there and I'm looking at a book and I read it, do I learn it? No. Sometimes. Maybe. The more times you read it, do you learn it more? Like, usually, yeah, but like sometimes you read it once and you get it, right? There's this idea of getting it. The light bulb goes off. Now I understand it. It's not repetition, because you don't have to repeat something over and over and over again, right? So for example, like if I go to a taco truck and it has amazing tacos, I have learned that that place has amazing tacos. I don't have to eat there 14 times to discover it has amazing tacos. I can eat there just once. And that knowledge has sunk all the way into my mind. How does that work? How does stuff from the outside world enter in here? We're going to teach you that. Then we're going to talk, and so practically we're going to teach you study tips too. All right, so I'll give you guys just a question. If I'm in a burning building and I'm trying to read an algebra textbook versus in a quiet library and I'm reading an algebra textbook, which one do I have to repeat more times? Like, in which scenario do you think I'm more likely to being learning the algebra? That sentence blew apart in my mind. Right? So I know you guys are trolling me, but just think about it. So there are certain things about the circumstances that we live in that will adjust whether we learn or not. So how can we understand that? So then we're going to talk about Vidya Nyan. This is huge, okay? So information does not create behavioral change. Understanding creates behavioral change. So what is the difference between information and understanding? And how can we cultivate understanding from information? That's all over here. Okay? Sukhapada, let's just do this. So now this is interesting because this is going to be a part of the depression module too. So some of these segments kind of intersect. So Sukhapada has dukkha, which is, so the Sukhapada is like how to be happy, basically. So dukkha is suffering. What is the nature of suffering? Like, why do we suffer and where does that come from? Then we're going to talk about dharma, which is duty or responsibility. So like the antidote to dukkha is dharma. So once you find your duty or responsibility, it allows you to tolerate suffering. The basic problem that we have in life is that most of the time we tend to gravitate towards pleasure and away from pain. The problem is that that doesn't create a life that we actually want, right? It's what our brain wants to chase. It's what our brain is wired to do. By the way, side note, I don't know if you guys ever realized this. Our brain has not evolved to be happy. It has evolved to survive. And therein lies so many of our mental problems. So how can we actually, because the brain is wired to gravitate towards pleasure. That's why it wants to eat a pizza every day. Like, that's what it wants to do. So how can we understand like dukkha and suffering? And more importantly, what dharma allows us to do is to overcome that. So instead of using willpower to choose between pain and pleasure, it allows us to intrinsically choose the hard path. And if I think about one thing for most of the people who come into my office who aren't clinical, but like from the HD community, like young people, right, who are like depressed or whatever, it's that they don't have the ability to choose the hard path. And if they could willingly choose the hard path, their lives would be completely different. So we're going to teach you guys how to pick the hard path. Then we're going to talk about karma. So I've talked about dharma a fair amount on stream, and then everyone's like, oh my God, how do I find my dharma? Great question. Deficiency on my part as a teacher because I haven't had the space or time to teach this. And even when I have taught it, a month later, I'm streaming and I talk about dharma and everyone's like, oh my God, how do I find my dharma? Like, that's the problem, is that it's not like all in one place. We have a wiki, which is pretty good. It's actually really good, but like still not quite what we're looking for. So finding your dharma depends on your karma. So understanding the principle of karma a little bit, understanding what your karma is so that you can find your dharma. Then we have the manaspada. So what is the nature of mind? What is our mind? What are the pieces of mind? How does it work? The system of the mind. How does the mind function? How do the parts interact? We're going to do a little bit about mantra. So a lot of people will ask about mantra. So like, what is the nature of mantra practice? How does it work? We're going to teach you guys japa here too, is on the meditation. So there's japa, right? So there are meditations for each of these things. I mean, not every video, but that illustrate these different concepts. Then we're going to move on to Vedic psychology. We're going to teach you guys about working with samskars. And then sort of back to this question of coaching versus therapy, which is like, this is what our coaches are trained to do. Okay, so that's the meditation module. Then we have the depression module, which I'm going to do quickly, just because I've been talking for a while. So we have our module overview. Same thing as anxiety, right? Like, so when people come into my office, is this person unhappy or are they depressed? Are we dealing with a clinical illness? Are we dealing with someone who doesn't have a good reason to get up in the morning? It may not be a neurochemistry imbalance. It may just be that they just don't have a good reason to get up in the morning, which is totally fine. There's an answer for that, but we just have to understand. Is this like an illness that is happening to this person's brain? Or is this like a condition of their life that needs to be dealt with? So down the clinical track, we're going to talk a little bit about the neuroscience of depression, and then we're going to talk about the principle of differential diagnosis. Features of clinical depression, we're going to talk a little bit about bipolar disorder. And then general treatment principles. So like, how do you approach treating depression? How do I, as a clinician, I explain all my clinical thinking. When someone walks into my office and is depressed, this is how I think about them. These are the different tools at our disposal. How does meditation work with medication? Is there a difference? Like, when do I pick one? When do I pick the other? What is psychotherapy? What are the kinds of psychotherapy? How do I find a psychotherapist? We're going to cover all that stuff for you guys. Like general treatment principles, that is crazy that like people don't know this stuff, right? Because no one teaches it. So what happens is you pay like hundreds of dollars to go see a psychiatrist and they tell you this thing, which I do too when people, because I have to explain it. But what I realize is like, it's silly that like you're spending time, I'm saying the same damn thing to all of my patients. Here's my approach to treating depression. Here are the options. Here are the advantages of the different treatment options that we have. That's general treatment principles. Going back to Ayurveda, we already covered this, but everything's going to have sort of a depression take. Herbs for depression, Ayurveda for depression, dietary guidance, which includes depressive stuff, brain gut. These are actually the same videos in each module, but these are different. Okay? Then we go down the non-clinical track. So this is what I call congruent depression. This is like, yeah, you're depressed, but like it sort of makes sense, right? So these are people who are like concerned about climate change and worry that the world is going to hell. It's like existential depression. You genuinely wake up every day and you're just like hanging out, not really accomplishing much. You're not challenged in life. You're not engaged in life. You have nothing to be proud of or very little to be proud of. Or for some people, you have a lot to be proud of and you're still not happy. So you do have a good job, you do have a good relationship, but you wake up every day and you feel unhappy. You feel unfulfilled. So both of those, all of that falls under congruent depression. I know it sounds absolutely crazy, chat, but sometimes these people come into my office and I'm like, bro, I don't think you have a mental illness. I don't think you're mentally ill. I don't think you need antidepressant medication. I think you're unhappy. You're unfulfilled. That your life right now is missing something. Let me help you find it. You're not mentally ill if you feel that way. And there are all degrees of function in there, right? Some people are highly functional and have congruent depression. Some people are not very functional and have congruent depression. The cool thing is that both of them, doesn't matter whether you don't have a relationship or don't have a job or you're a billionaire. I've seen both. And the solution is the same. Okay? So then we go over the cognitive features of depression, kind of like anxiety. Like, what is the nature of depression? It's a mind that's filled with regret. It's a mind that thinks about itself way too much, right? Depressed people feel like they blame themselves for everything. Then we go back to Panchakosha, which is this five-limbed approach to treating depression. So this is also where we go back to dukkha, dharma, and karma, because that's a big part of understanding this. Oh, now we get to the fun stuff, negative emotions. So what is the nature of, like, why do we... Interesting question, right? So chat, so I'll ask you guys. So negative emotions. Why do people have negative emotions? Like, think about this for a second. Our brain has the capacity to feel sadness. It's a universal conserved. Every human being has the capacity to feel sad, capacity to feel anxious. Why? Why? What do they do for us? Why do we have them? We have to understand what the purpose of something is to control it. Okay? So then we go to Vedic psychology from there. Then we go through, and this was leaked a couple weeks ago, 5 common samskars, 5 big problems that people who are quote-unquote depressed have. These aren't clinical things. These are like 5 things that people like deal with psychologically. So one is falling behind. A lot of people are depressed because they've fallen behind. How do you understand that? How do you come out of it? A lot of people are depressed because they're unable to forgive. Either forgive themselves, self-compassion and all that jazz, or forgive other people. Kind of weird. That gets really, really complicated and really tricky. Because why can't you forgive? Why do you blame yourself? Sometimes we blame ourselves to protect the ones that we love from blame. And so it's really, really complicated, chat. Subtle, very subtle. Not so much complicated, more subtle. Hard to detect. Because in order to forgive someone, you gotta blame them first. And then we get into this really big problem because there are some people in life who have wronged us. But because we love them and we want to protect them, we never blame them, and then we blame ourselves. Then we get into this really simple problem, is that if I'm diagnosing the wrong thing, it can never be fixed. So bizarrely, if you keep blaming yourself for something and you can't forgive yourself, maybe it's not actually your fault. Maybe your inability to forgive yourself is actually like not incorrect. Maybe it's because you actually weren't responsible. So in order to move past it and let go of your self-blame, you have to start by blaming the responsible party. Crazy. Right? So HS Blackjack says, I don't think I deserve forgiveness. Yeah, chat. I hear ya. So, let's go here. Exactly. No. Self-blame. It's my fault. I'm so stupid. I'm too lazy. Everyone else is better than me. Right? So we're going to deal with that. We're going to show you guys that stuff. For people who don't believe they deserve forgiveness, why don't they believe they deserve forgiveness? Yes. Bros, I don't think y'all understand. I've written basically like 3 books in the last 4 to 6 months. And ladies, this is like hundreds of pages of stuff. Probably close to 200,000 words. And then like, that's the easy part. The hard part is distilling it, so it's understandable. So we're going to get to protective hopelessness. Okay? This is why are you so hopeless? Because it helps you. All of your mental things, even the ones that cause you suffering, serve a function. Understand that your brain isn't busted. Your brain like damn well knows what it's doing. And it tries to help you. Because here's the thing, if I'm hopeless... Okay, here's the question, chat. Let's see if you guys can figure this out. What do hopeless people never do? Try. Beautiful, chat. And if you never try, what are you impervious to? What can never die? What can never happen if you never try? You can never fail. So I want y'all to understand that if you're hopeless, beautiful. See, it's not hard, chat. It's not hard to understand. It's just people don't look at it. So people who are people who are filled with hopelessness, it's a protection against failure. It's that simple. Is it difficult? Absolutely. Is it hard to overcome? Absolutely. But it's not complicated. Because as long as you lack hope, you're never going to try, and as long as you never try, you can never fail. So if you're hopeless, the first step is to be like ready to fail and work through why you are unwilling to try and why failure is not an option for you. And you're going to dig into weird stuff there. You're going to find you're going to find situations like when you grew up, your parents told you that you were really, really smart and you had tons of potential. And when you were told that you were so smart and you have tons of potential and if you just applied yourself, you could do it. or you had tiger parents, what happened is like failure was no longer an option for you. So you could never give it your all. And so maybe you were like me, who never gave it my all, because if I gave it my all and I got a B, that would be like devastating. So instead, what I would do is procrastinate and wait till the last minute. And then when I got a B or I got a C, in the back of my mind, if I had studied, I would have gotten an A. And it sounds like it's a bad thing, right? Like, oh, I wish I could study. That's what your mind tells you. But in the back of your mind, you're like, whew, because I left myself the out. I can live with myself another day. I can live with myself another day because it wasn't my fault, because I didn't try. I didn't give it my all. And so then we're stuck with a life that's full of C's. We're stuck. You can never give it your all, so you can't build the life that you want to. Really important to understand. Okay? So we're going to help you deal with that. Conditional love. Oh, this is rough. So this is the kind of thing where like some people were taught that their value, the person who's like, I don't deserve it to be loved or get better or whatever. Some of us were taught that our value as human beings is based on extrinsic performance. Like, so this also has to do with a certain kind of parental upbringing and things like that. But like some people were sort of taught that, their value is based on their performance. Then we get stuck in this cycle where I'm worthless because I'm not able to do X, Y, Z. I don't have enough money. I didn't go to an Ivy League school, whatever. And then the problem is that like once you underperform, it devastates your confidence. And once you devastate your confidence, it leads you to underperform. And then you underperform even more. And then you think it devastates your confidence even more. And it's like this vicious cycle that you can't get out of. Okay? There isn't a book, or maybe, I don't know. But this is what we've been working on. So this project is done. The filming is done. These are like modules that you guys can go through. That explains all this stuff. That's our super secret project. Then we get to the fantasy trap, which is how we sort of get stuck living in fantasy. This is a fun one. So I'm going to give you guys a scenario. Maybe you guys can empathize with it, okay? So I remember getting bullied. And I'd get bullied. And I'd feel really ashamed after the bullying, right? And then after I'd be really ashamed, I'd start to think. I'd be like, I'm going to go learn martial arts. And I'm going to like learn how to kick that guy's ass. And then I'd imagine like, oh yeah, like it's going to be like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and he's going to show up and he's not going to know what's coming. Like he's not going to be ready for it. I'm going to kick his ass and then it's going to be great. And then like, how do you feel at the end of that? Right? You feel so good. You feel triumphant. And so it's really bizarre. But like you started out getting bullied, like getting your ass kicked. And then your mind does this little trick where it makes you feel triumph. And then once you're triumphant, then there's like no need to do anything. It destroys your motivation. GG. Same thing's going to happen tomorrow. It's bizarre how fantasies trap us, why we get trapped by them. Right? It's like our mind is like trying to protect you from that negative emotion. So what does it do? It turns shame into triumph in your head. Some weird magic trick stuff. Right? It's weird. And then the problem is that once you feel triumph after getting your ass kicked, you don't actually do anything because you're getting the reward in your head right there. So if you live in fantasy, like you're actually depriving yourself of a lot of that good negative emotion, which we cover here. Why does negative emotion exist? Like it exists for a reason. It helps us. So if you look at the parts of our brain that experience negative emotion, they have the most connections to our learning circuitry. And we see this a lot with like video game addiction, is like when you shut off the brain's negative emotions through video games, and then a lot of people who like have video game addiction will be like, I know I need to stop, I just can't. And it's kind of weird, right? Like they're like, I know it's a problem, I just can't do it. And like, if you know it's a problem, why can't you do it? There's a good neuroscience correlation here because your learning circuitry, your thing that allows you to actually adjust your behavior, your hippocampus, is driven by your negative emotions. Wait, what is? Okay. Is driven by your negative emotions. And so when I turn off my negative emotions, I shut off my ability to learn. What's happening? No. Okay. I'm confused. All right, so then we're going to teach you guys how to deal with some scars. So how to deal with these, right? So if you fall into this category, how to understand it, how to deal with it. And then we'll also, for people who are curious, you can talk about coaching versus therapy. So that's the project, chat. So for those of you who are kind of joining in later, this is one of our super secret projects here at Healthy Gamer. It's what we've been spending the last 4 to 6 months working on, is my guide to mental health, Dr. Gay's guide to mental health. And so, we're planning on doing more, but these are the first 3 that we're working on. And so, there's probably going to be an advanced meditation one. Next up on the list is relationships. And so it should be ready. We're hoping to have it released at the end of May. People are talking about Twitch and YouTube and whatnot. So I don't think we're going to release it there because, it doesn't have the kind of infrastructure that we're going for. So the kind of infrastructure that we're going for is literally when someone comes into my office and when I try to help another human being, I don't teach them things in a linear way, right? I teach them things that are applicable to their situation. So that's why the way that the module is structured is almost like a choose your own adventure. It's structured like an open world game. So we explain, okay, what's clinical versus non-clinical depression? And if clinical depression fits for you, then you should go and do this stuff. If non-clinical depression seems to be what you're struggling with, then go over here, right? And then people are like, oh, I'm interested in Ayurveda. And other people are like, yeah, that's pseudoscience. I'm not interested in it. No big deal, right? So we can go through general treatment principles. No big deal. You want to learn about neuroscience? Go for it. You want to understand differential diagnosis? Go for it. You want to talk about bipolar? Go for it. You don't want to talk about any of that stuff? You want a more spiritual perspective on why people get depressed? That's there for you. And then each step of the way, we've got different kinds of additions and supplements and different kinds of meditations. So these are the meditations that we have planned. I think we've got somewhere between 20 and 35 meditations. I don't know what the final count is. We teach a lot of advanced meditation too in the module where you do a particular practice for a few weeks. Then you move on to the 2nd level and the 3rd level. Order how, you guys, so there's a sign up somewhere. Yeah, there's a waitlist sign up. Okay? Yeah, it's going to be ready in about 2 months. You guys can sign up for the waitlist there. There's no, so someone asked, is there yoga? This whole damn thing is yoga. But if you're talking about asana, which is one of the step 3 out of 8 of the Raja Yoga path, there is no asana. Coming soon. So this is something to understand, chat. Yoga, the Sanskrit word yoga comes from the root yuj. Yuj is a yolk, Y-O-K-E, not like the inside of an egg. The yolk is what binds 2 things together. So yoga it's a beautiful double meaning, double entendre, where yolk is, so the process of yoga is becoming free from oneself. So unyoking yourself from your false identity and also reconnecting with your cosmic consciousness or Brahman or whatever, becoming enlightened basically. Right? So it's this idea of freeing yourself from your former identity as well as tying yourself to your real identity. Okay? All right. So let me ask. So I know Dr. K has been busy. I've not had as much time to take care of thee, for which I apologize. And also, this is what I've been up to. And it's my belief, generally speaking, that this is what's going to help people. So our coaching program is great and all, but a lot of people coaching may not be for them, which is totally cool. They're just interested in learning more about meditation or depression or anxiety. And so, yeah. Okay, so we gonna do call-ins or questions, or what do y'all want to do? Thank you guys very much. Call Joe. Joe Mama. Reddit, please. Okay, let's do Reddit. So, as you guys know, we have the Redditars. So what we're gonna do is take a quick look. I've been told that there are a few good posts. So we are going to go to Reddit. And Bird bars. Okay. Okay, we're going to do questions. Okay? So, how do we find who we... Okay, let me just figure this out, chat. Let me figure out which questions I'm supposed to do. Should I come to Discord? Chatars? Ah, I clicked the link. They've made it so easy for me. Oh, there's a... Okay. Man, these guys are great. Oh, shit. Hold on, chat. Beautiful. This question is what I think it is. It's going to be so good. Oh, shit. It's opening it up in my browser. Can I just open it in the... Hold on. How do I just open it on the... in my Discord? Okay, I'm going to just try joining here. Does this work? Chatars. See if this works. Hey, does this work? I'm talking to you. Can I just, because I was opening it in my browser and...
Oh, wait.
I couldn't get it to open in... Yeah, that works. Okay. So should I just answer from the top or what? Okay. Okay. So, hi, Dr. K. Do you have any advice on female incels? I'm in my late 20s and have never had a boyfriend. This has caused me to develop severe self-esteem issues. I've heard you say that women are the ones who pick the partners. What? And that women have to deal with too much attention and harassment. I have the opposite problem of most women. This makes me feel almost subhuman. I also feel like I'm running out of time to experience a romantic relationship. If no one wanted to be with me in the teens and 20s, what chance do I have in my 30s and 40s? Great question. So, hold on a second. Time to leak another super secret project. Oh God. Camera. Focus. Hold the hand in your mind, camera. Maybe I need to move forward. No, chat. Stay focused. There we go. Okay. So this is a great question. So one of the really interesting things, so we're actually writing a paper at Healthy Gamer on incels. And we've been doing a lot of research on this topic because I think it's something that a lot of people suffer from and struggle with. And I think a lot of our, we try to support the incel community, for lack of a better term. I mean, I know that sounds kind of scary, but what I mean by that is like, we try to help people understand that they have intrinsic value and that a lot of the sort of incel kind of thinking and belief system may not be entirely correct. So there are a couple of things that I want to point out. The first is that generally speaking, incel appears to be like refers to men, right? So if you look at the published literature on incels, they tend to focus entirely on men. But it's been our experience that there are actually like female people who identify with the term incel. So I think that's a huge problem in like the published literature in the way that people look at things. So I think that, this sort of belief or idea that you're an incel and will never find a romantic relationship is not gender specific. It may certainly be more prevalent in men. I'm not quite sure. I'd really have to see statistics around that, but generally speaking, makes sense to me because I tend to see or hear more about male incels. And so, I don't know if I said that women pick their partners, I know that that's a lot of like the thinking of incels is that women, there's a sexual marketplace and whatnot. I mean, I generally speaking, so if I said that in the past, I didn't mean it like that. And it's my experience that generally speaking, when you're picking a partner, like both people pick. Right? It's sort of the whole idea behind a partnership is that it's like a mutual arrangement. And it's not like one person is picking and the other person isn't. I understand that that's been some people's experiences, and some people can definitely get into the sort of relationship where there's a power dynamic. So don't get me wrong there. That's definitely possible. But I think that generally speaking, if you think about a relationship, it's like the whole point is that there's a relation, right? So there's like both people are sort of agreeing to have this relationship. And so I think the problem here is that if we listen to what this person says, they're saying, women are the ones who get to pick, and I have the opposite problem. So I'm not like most women, therefore I feel subhuman. So if you stop and think about it for a second, what you see is that the feeling of subhuman is rooted in the idea that most people are one way and I am the other way. So it's interesting because like where do you get the idea that most women are one way and that you're a different way? So I think that there's also something that's very common for people, which is that they feel like they're running out of time to experience a romantic relationship. And that makes sense. Like the time, the hourglass is kind of going, and the further that you go, the worse off you are. So I want to share with you guys a couple of the things that we've discovered through our research. I mean, it's not like this stuff is sort of known already, but like this is what we pieced together is maybe a better way to put it. So the first is that when people are incels, that it's primarily like sort of a psychological thing. So it's not actually like, it's a belief system. So here's what happens with an incel. So they start out with usually some kind of adverse experience or the idea of a missed milestone. So it's not even like necessarily something bad happened to them, but they turn 18 or they turn 21 or they graduate from college. And it starts with this sort of idea that like I was supposed to have done something by a particular time. So there's a missed milestone. That's where it starts. Or some kind of rejection or negative experience. And then what's really changed now is that we can sort of engage with communities that will actually like reinforce this idea. So if you engage with a community where everyone else has missed milestones and none of the people have sort of made it out of inceldom, it's going to color your perspective on the world. And so then what becomes a personal experience that maybe is actually changeable starts to feel like universal truth. And there's really interesting research, if you look at research on incels, is that there's an online radicalization process. And this is not actually, it's not really anyone's fault. It's just interesting because if you think about YouTube, right? If I watch a video on YouTube on incels, what is YouTube going to suggest to me? So you have these content platforms that are trying to do their best to make their content the most appealing to you. And if you watch one incel video, then you're going to get populated with like a second one. And if you watch a second one, then you're going to get populated with 4 and 6 and 10. So there's this online radicalization effect, which is probably has something to do with the algorithms of content platforms. So it's not like people are purposely seeking this stuff out. Maybe some of them are. But if you look, there's this online drift. So you start out with sort of like the gateway drug. And then you kind of gradually, like what happens is these platforms will push you towards more radicalizing content. So this is why you see radicalization in general amongst politics and all kinds of other things. So it has a really interesting effect on your psychology. And so psychologically, what starts to happen is your experience becomes incredibly validated. And now we get to something else about the incel community is that it's incredibly validating, right? Like this person feels like they're subhuman. And so it can feel actually really good to be like in a community with other people who feel subhuman because they're people who get you, right? They're your people. And so like this is a world that rejects you. And so you can find a community that accepts you the way you are and says, yeah, it sucks. It's not your fault. There's a sexual marketplace value. Your jawline isn't manly enough. You were born with the beta gene. It's not your fault. Don't feel that way about yourself. It's sad. It's true. It's incredibly validating. And so there's this weird kind of combination of online radicalization along with like warm, open arms, which then gets people to really think this way, right? And then you start thinking that way. It's very emotionally like gratifying. But then you can start to believe these things. And it's not wrong to believe them because that's what your brain is designed to do. If you're hanging out with 1,000 people that all tell you the same thing, like you're going to start believing it. It's like how it works. So, the short answer is that you've still got a chance, like absolutely, right? So the only time you don't have a chance is when you stop trying. That's really the only thing that will determine when you don't have a chance. And I've worked with tons of incels, and my experience has been that what's really at the core of it is the self-esteem. It's not that like, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because once certain experiences cause you to have a self-esteem, that feeling of being subhuman is going to affect every romantic interaction that you have. And so it's overcoming that internal feeling of self-esteem or feeling subhuman, which will then naturally alter the way that you engage in relationships. So oddly enough, I think people think about being an incel, and the cure to being an incel is getting laid or finding a partner. And so then you're no longer an incel. But we've even had people on stream who have like had relationships and they're like, I'm still an incel. So it's bizarre because people think that becoming no longer being an incel is about an outward change, but it's not about an outward change. It's about an internal change. And we've seen that. We've seen people who like actually have relationships, have women that persistently ask them out and they still feel like an incel. And so it has nothing to do with the outside. You being an incel has nothing to do with like the way that people treat you. It has everything to do with the way that you perceive yourself. Right? Because is there like a, crowd of people that's like running around and like calling you an incel? No, it's an identity that you take on. And so the cool thing is that if it's an identity that you take on, it's also within your power to no longer have it. Now, it's not easy. I'm making it sound easy. It's certainly not easy. It takes a lot of work, right? So it requires a lot of like effort and self-reflection and really like digging to the bottom of your self-esteem. So I'd say that the real approach is to like tackle the samskar of low self-esteem. And this is where I'd even say like, when did you start feeling like you were an incel? Because I don't think it's like, has nothing to do with your 20s. It's probably happened a long time ago. May even have nothing to do, when did you start feeling subhuman? That too, it may not be like it may not have even been in your teen years. Like you may have had some kind of experience in childhood where you really, really felt like subhuman. And so that feeling of subhumanness, which you carry with you, then finds a new set of clothes, which is inceldom. And so it like puts that on. So I think there's absolutely hope for you. You just have to be willing to try. And I know that you try really, really hard. It's just you have to try in sort of a different way. So I'd say forget about the incel, forget about the relationships, and focus a little bit about what's really chipped away at your self-esteem, what's contributed this idea that you're subhuman, and work on like building confidence and spending time with nature and like things like that. Okay? Hope that's helpful, and good luck to you. So what I'm going to try to do is... see if this works. There we go. Okay. Dear Dr. K, can you please speak on the recommendation for how to best give advice on the Healthy Gamer Discord? And also how to avoid the potential dangers on giving advice? Not only advice, but helping people in general here or on other platforms for that matter. What caution to take as people seek help and advice, and you decide to start engaging them? I don't think that this has been discussed in depth on any of your streams. I think this would be beneficial for many of us who work on our karma and wishes to help others. Beautiful question. And you're absolutely right. It hasn't been discussed. And it's very important to discuss. So the question is about, how to best give advice to like people on the internet or people in our community. So I love the question because it's really something that's long overdue. So let's start by thinking a little bit about, what your role is in the world. So I think you have to understand that there's a certain threshold of responsibility. And that generally speaking, when you're behaving on the internet, you should be really careful about owning responsibility for another human being. So I've seen this a lot where, sometimes people will like push help onto other people. And in the most dire cases, they'll even like harass them and be like, hey, you really need help. And I'm the one that's here to help you. I'm like big on my own karma. And like, I want to be a good person. And like, please let me help you. Please let me help you. That's not how you want to do it. So the first thing to understand is that when you're trying to help someone, it shouldn't be about you. And pay a lot of attention to your own ego. Like how much of like me helping this person is about like me being a good person and how much of it is like genuinely for helping them. So it's a hard question to answer, but I encourage you to start there. Second thing is I wouldn't give something to people that they don't ask for, right? So if you're trying to give advice to people, like make sure they ask for it. So that's the second thing. Third thing is like ask for permission before you give advice. So even if they ask for it, that's one thing. But like if you want to share something with them, like ask for permission. And I even do that on stream with people. It's like, hey, can I share some thoughts with you? Like I'll always ask for permission, even if they're coming on Dr. K's stream, and even if they're like here presumably to get my advice. Like I'm still going to ask for permission. And then you'll kind of signal to them that like, hey, there's something I want to share with you. Is it okay or is it not okay? Because a big problem about helping other people on the internet is boundaries. So like you want to maintain really good boundaries by asking for permission. The other really tricky thing is that recognize that you can try to help them, but that they're not your responsibility, right? So at the end of the day, you can try to help someone, but you can't really like fix them. I can't fix them. Like even as a psychiatric provider with a lot of training and, a lot of like my medical license gives me a lot of power. Like I can pick up a phone call and I can have someone hospitalized against their will. It's crazy. But even with all that power, I've understood, and medicine teaches you this, that you can be a brilliant doctor, but you can't save a life. And this goes back to like karmafar, that I can do the best that I can do, and that as a psychiatrist, I literally can't prevent someone from committing suicide. I may be able to for a few days by forcibly hospitalizing them. But even then, when they get out, they're not going to stay there forever. So even as a psychiatric provider, and especially as someone like on the internet who may not even have those kinds of powers or training, recognize that you can offer what you have to offer, but you can't actually like control an outcome for another human being. And I've learned that the hard way, that you can try as hard as you want to, but at the end of the day, especially when it comes to like, supporting someone's mental health and especially even mental health treatment, that like there's another conscious, autonomous human being who ethically has particular rights, and no amount of my caring, can really like take those rights away. Sometimes I'll do it in drastic situations for brief periods of time. But my approach as a mental health provider is to work with someone, not like take power away from them. It's to empower people and to try to trust them to like do their part, and I'm going to do mine. That I'm there for them, but also like they have to, walk that path too. I'm going to walk it with them. I can't walk it for them. So if you're trying to help someone, I'd really remember that you're there to offer what you can offer, and you can't do anything more than that. And now another important issue about boundaries is that I think sometimes people will get sort of trapped in being an emotional support for another person that isn't helpful. So I know it sounds weird, but sometimes like people are just looking for a psychological like out, like, they're looking for some kind of psychological support. So I'd really think long and hard about what you're providing for the other person and whether you're actually engendering some kind of dependency. So sometimes what'll happen is people will like seek a sympathetic ear, and they'll like continue to seek a sympathetic ear. And it can be really like, can cause the caretakers to burn out. Like even online, we've seen that a lot in our community, where it can be really hard, and it can be really hard on the person who's trying to care, because then you feel guilty if you're not caring, right? And so you also have to recognize what your own limits are. And at the end of the day, you want to be like an emotional support for people, which is fantastic. But you also want to encourage them to really like take a step forward, and that they may need like a therapist or psychiatrist or something like that. So encourage them to do that. So I think basically what I would suggest is that, y'all sort of try to do, like, here's the compass that I use, is that, like, I think about what my skill set is. I think about what the boundaries of the relationship are, and then I try to do my best within that box. So, do the best in the box that you're given. So if you want to support people emotionally on the internet, like, that's totally cool. But recognize that you're not a mental health provider. Recognize that ultimately you're not responsible for this person's feelings. And like, encourage them that you can support them emotionally, but also, like, encourage them to, like, take care of themselves too, right? They shouldn't be leaning on you for everything. And if you find yourself on the receiving end of that relationship, sometimes you have to have a hard conversation with them, which you may feel is, like, going to devastate them, and it could devastate them, but you still sometimes have to have it. Right? You can say to people, hey, I really want to emotionally support you. I really enjoy, like, our talks together. I really hope I'm helping you. And at the same time, I feel like I can't fix your life. And sometimes I'm a little bit concerned that while you lean on me as an emotional support, which I want you to continue to do, I also am, like, concerned that, like, sometimes you may be using that as a substitute for other things. What do you think? Right? So share your feelings with someone and be transparent about it, and then, like, tell them. And then you can even ask them, like, more complicated questions, like, what are you hearing me say? Are you hearing me say that I don't want to talk to you anymore? Because sometimes their minds can become black and white. Then you can sort of reiterate that. You can say, I'm not saying that I don't want to talk to you. The reason that I'm actually having this conversation with you is because I think you deserve to live a life that's, like, amazing. And I'm concerned that you're leaning on me too much and that I actually don't have the power to create the life for you that you deserve. And that that may require, like, additional steps. What do you think? Right? So there's also something I've been thinking a little bit about, is, like, teaching y'all. So this is going to be maybe in the relationship module, but teaching you guys how to talk. Right? Like that, like, you can want something for someone else. You can care about them. But just because they're leaning on you, like, people can come to me and be like, hey, can you, I'm hungry. And I'm like, I can make you eggs. Let me make you eggs and toast. And here's a piece of fruit. But if they want, like, a 7-course, like, sashimi tasting menu, like, I can't provide that as much as they want it. I can only give what I can give. And that sometimes when people find any source of food and that's really what they want, I'm like, dude, if you want a 7-course sashimi tasting menu, go for it. I want you to have that. I can't give it to you, though. Right? So recognize it's all about, so just to summarize, when giving advice on the internet, first of all, it's about respect. Recognize your own ego in the equation. How much of you helping them is about you and how much you helping them is about them. Second thing, boundaries are important, right? So recognize what's the emotional toll that it's taking on you. What's the benefit it's giving to them? Third thing is recognize that you may not be able to help them in all of the ways that you want or that they don't want. The worst cases of this online emotional support I've seen is when both the supporter and the person who needs support both agree that we're going to try to save you from suicide, and neither of them is equipped from it. It's a responsibility that one person dumps on you that you willingly take, but you're ill-equipped to handle it. So recognize what your own limits are and have authentic conversations with people about your limits and say to them, is it possible for me to care about you? I really do care about you. And it's because I care about you that I want you to see a therapist. I love to talk to you. I want to continue doing it. And at the same time, I think you deserve better than some rando on the internet like myself. And so just say that, right? Be authentic, respect the boundaries, ask for permission. Okay, next question. These are great, by the way. Okay. Oh. Okay, next question. Hi, Dr. K. Everything goes great for a bit and then collapses. I find myself in two modes, either workaholic on top of everything, and then eventually completely unable to bring myself to even click on a video of yours that might help because I would have to face how far I have fallen. While workaholic mode is stressful, it makes me feel good about myself, and the other mode makes me hate myself. This sounds kind of similar to your initial struggles in college and would love some advice. While I wish I could be in workaholic mode all the time, I feel like it's unsustainable and I have no idea how to exist in the middle. Beautiful. Great question. Love it. Love it. Okay. Okay. So the problem here is the sentence, while I wish I could be a workaholic mode all the time. That's the problem. So let's think about this, okay? So a lot of times when we see this pattern of workaholic followed by crash, the default answer that everyone comes to is like, how can I continue to be a workaholic? Because that's when I'm successful. And they're like, I want to avoid the crashes. I just want the workaholic, right? I want to avoid the depression. I just want the mania. And the thing is like that the two are built together. It's kind of like if I take a neutron and I split it, I get a positron and an electron. I don't get to just have one. And so the interesting thing is that everyone is focused on avoiding the negative. But what you really have to let go is the positive. If you want to find balance, you have to give up the good side of it. Right? If you're hypomanic, that's going to come with depression. It's just like a universal principle of life. You know, if I split apart H2O, I'm left with oxygen and hydrogen. Like, there's no way to get around it. So oddly enough, I think this is the problem. We listen, okay? While workaholic mode is stressful, it makes me feel good about myself. And the other modes make me hate myself. So you have to give up both. That's why you're stuck. You have to give up the feeling good about yourself. You have to let go of that. Right? Because also from sort of an energetic perspective, like we see this a lot with vatas and other kind of situations. I see this a lot in investment banking all over the place. That if you're burning the candle from both ends, you're going to burn out. Like that's just how it is. Marshaling your energy to avoid the crashes comes from not burning out too much. So oddly enough, if this person is stuck, because I'm sure they've tried so many different things to figure out how to come out of the crash or keep the workaholic mode going. Whereas I don't think they've tried as many things to slow down the workaholic mode. It's not about rekindling the burnt out flame, because then like we get into this problem, right? So after you burnt out for a while, they say, this sounds kind of, and eventually completely unable to bring myself to even click on a video of yours that might help me because I would have to face how far I have fallen. So when you've fallen so far and you find that workaholic mode again, it's really hard to slow down because you're like, I'm back, baby. I'm back, son. Let's go. Right? It's so hard to slow down. It's so hard because you're feeling so good about yourself. It's over. I'm finished. This time I'm going to make it work. This time it's going to be different. I'm going to do it this time. I've changed. That's what you've got to let go of. Let go of the positive and the negative will go with it. Be balanced. Right? Don't focus on the positron because every time you make a positron, you're going to make that electron. It's a fact of physics. So my first question for this person would be like, how do you feel about yourself when you're a workaholic, right? You feel great, and explore that feeling. Because why are you so hungry for feeling so accomplished? And as you get to the roots of needing the high, then you can let go of the high. And when you let go of the high, the low is going to follow. Then you'll be balanced. You'll be stably productive. So focus on the positive, why you need it so bad. And get to the root of like why you need to feel so successful while you're a workaholic. Okay? Great question. Brilliant. Love it. Love it. Oh, so that's from someone from my high performance group. Great. That's exactly what we have that kind of group for. So for those of you who don't know, we are piloting a program for like high performance people. So not everyone in Healthy Gamer is a NEET. And so we try to support all walks of life, all walks of success. Wherever you are, we try to kind of support. Some people are really functional, like in this sort of pattern where they have periods of time where it's really high levels of work followed by low levels of work. So we try to support those people too. Hi, Dr. K. Can make a stream for us nerds where you talk about the future of mental health. What exciting new research is out there? What promising technologies are going to be used for the diagnosis or the treatment of mental illness? What does the statistics project? What do statistics project about the future of mental health? Great question. So I'm really excited for mental health, and it looks kind of bleak, TBH. So mental health is on the rise pretty universally all over the world. So I think that there's a big reason for that, and it has to do with sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's complicated. So generally speaking, that the more our basic needs are met, the more we tend to have mental problems. And this is what Buddha discovered. So I'm going to answer this question kind of in a weird way. So when I'm unhappy, I tend to think that a particular thing in my life will make me happier. Like if I'm an incel, I think that a relationship, if I'm no longer an incel and I find a relationship, then I'll be happy. If I don't make enough money, I think, oh, if I get a promotion, I'll be happy. So we look at all these external things as a source for happiness. And so what happened in Buddha's case is like he got everything. He won the game of life. And then he woke up one day and he's unhappy. And then he's really screwed. It's actually a terrifying position to be in. Right? I saw someone joking about, a billionaire depressed, lol. How could that happen? And the funny thing is that the more successful you become, the more likely you are to become like existentially unhappy. Because the source of happiness is not actually materialistic things. And once you're not going to realize that until all of your materialistic desires have been satisfied. And then when you wake up one day and you're not happy, then you're screwed, which is literally what happened to Buddha. It's Buddha's story through and through. Is that he was a king, he was loved, he was married to a beautiful woman, had a healthy son, was respected, was powerful, was competent, had it all. And then he woke up one day and he was like, well, I'm still not happy. Now what? So, as a society in general, I think there's a lot of advancement, right? And I know it's sometimes hard to see this, but like, I remember talking to my grandmother, and I have like an aunt who like passed away in childhood, right? Like infant mortality rates used to be like 20%, 30%. Like children would die routinely. It was like a common experience that people had. And that doesn't happen quite as often. I mean, it's absolutely a tragedy when it does, but thankfully, like we've advanced some, right? So it used to be that like, I saw a picture of someone with syphilis like 100 years ago. And before like the discovery of penicillin, like syphilis would destroy you. And so we've progressed a lot. So now the challenge is primarily mental. We've conquered a lot of the diseases of the body. Now the diseases that we face are like diseases of long life and health. Like they're just sort of more natural things like diabetes and obesity and dementia. Like why wasn't dementia a problem 500 years ago? It's because the human body wasn't designed to live until it was like 70 or 80. Like the mortality rate was average. Life expectancy was way lower. So it's just our body's sort of not designed to function that long. So with the advancement of physical health comes a natural rise in mental health, problems with mental health. So, on the one hand, things are looking bleak, but I'm really hopeful because I think that we have a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, right? So I think we're like, as a society, I think we're becoming a little bit more spiritual despite becoming less religious, which I think is like fine. Like, I don't think that you need to be religious. But I think as we sort of face these challenges, I'm really hopeful, actually, and Healthy Gamer is a huge source of my hope, because I think it's really awesome that, like, I used to feel like I had to fix all of this. But what I've realized from, like, our last question is, like, oh, I try to help randos on the internet. Can you teach me how to be better at it? That's what's going to work. So while mental health problems are on the rise, while despair is increasing existentially, cosmically, there's a whole generation of people who are like existentially depressed. And we're here for you at Healthy Gamer. And when I say we, I really mean we. I mean all the people on our Discord, all the people in chat, like people are here for you. So this problem is gigantic. It feels to me like the final boss, but I also think this is the end of the game where like you've spent time like building up all your resources, right? So we've got like, Healthy Gamer has helped 4 times as many people just through our coaching program, forget about the videos and all that kind of stuff, as I would in my entire life. If I worked clinically full-time for my entire life, I would not reach 25% of the people that our coaches have reached. So what are the resources we have at our disposal? We have this thing called the internet, right? We have the capacity now where instead of having the same conversation 100 times with 100 people, which is literally what I do in my office, I can have one conversation in front of thousands. and everyone can benefit from it. So I think it's like, it's bad and it's getting worse, but like this is end game stuff, right? Like it's end game content where we're geared up now. We have this internet, we have Twitch. Twitch used to be a gaming platform. Now we're talking about mental health. We have like this legion of people who have like come out of our community, signed up to be coaches, and are actually transforming lives day in and day out. We now have these technological things where I go to the person who runs our tech stuff, and I say to them like, hey, this is my vision. Like, this is what I think people need. Can you make it happen? And they're like, yeah, we're going to try. And they're the ones who put that together. The diagram that I showed you today is not my design, it's their design. From a technological platform, how do we make this work? How can we teach someone? So this is the cool thing, right? It's like we've got like data behind us too. So here at Healthy Gamer, like we're a big data-driven organization. So we're like even thinking about all kinds of how are we going to bake data in? How are we going to bake psychometrics in? How are we going to see, okay, if you screen this way through a diagnostic thing, which modules or meditations are statistically likely to help you? Cool, huh? So this is like, there's a lot of exciting research. There's a lot of exciting like platform development tools at our disposal to tackle this. So, one person saying data-driven sounds more like Scientology. Yeah, it may sound like it, but there's a huge difference because we actually have 3 IRB-approved studies that are being run right now, and we're applying for a 4th, right? So we're actually doing real research that we're planning on publishing. Hopefully within the next 2 months, we'll have published 2 peer-reviewed scientific papers. So, may sound like Scientology. I know we all talk a big game about a cult and it's a meme and all that good stuff. We're trying our level best to not be a cult. As much as we could, I suppose. And so, what are promising technologies? So I think there are a couple of things that are really interesting on the horizon. The first is meditation, and I would really love to see more research. You know, I think it's not really like my forte in terms of what I want to spend my time on. My time I want to really spend on helping you guys. But, you know, I'd love to see more advanced studies on meditation. So, for example, one colleague of mine did a particular study on using heart chakra meditations for people with depression. And I suspect that all of these different meditation techniques can be scientifically validated for different things. It's definitely something I've seen in my clinical experience, but I just decided at some point. So I developed a meditation program that targets neuroscience deficiencies and addictions. This is what I did at a place like Harvard Medical School, because that's the kind of things that you do at a place like Harvard Medical School, and it was poggers, absolutely. And at the same time, at some point I realized like what I want to help is y'all. Like I don't want to spend my time as a researcher. We're doing research at Healthy Gamer, absolutely. But the research is not the primary goal. It's actually to figure out what works the best for you. That's why we do research, because I can have the best ideas in the world. I can build this beautiful, content map, but does it actually work for you guys? Because that's what we want to do. So promising technologies and research. Meditation is at the top of the list. Other things. So I think there's a lot of potential with psychedelics, right? We're seeing some very interesting and promising research from psychedelics. I think it's a very good tool at our disposal because it accesses something that's a little bit more spiritual. So when people meditate on a regular basis, I see profound changes in their mental health. And I think if you look at the neuroscience of psychedelic use versus meditation, you find a lot of correlates. So like psychedelics are essentially a shortcut to some benefits of meditation and arguably can create some experiences that meditation will not be able to create, or can more reliably create things that cannot be created elsewhere. So I think there's a lot to be explored there, and it's exciting. At the same time, I think it's very, very rife with problems. So I think a lot of people will use psychedelics sort of on their own therapeutically, and I do not recommend that at all. I advise against it. I've seen way too many people come into my office with lifelong PTSD after an LSD trip. I've seen way too many people become dependent on microdosing to where they can't really function without it. And so I think any kind of chemical dependency to support your mental health is not really a good thing. So you got to be careful about that. And I think that at the end of the day, the really cool thing is that I think that the answers, so as mental health grows, or mental illness grows, part of the reason that it's growing is because we've forgotten a lot of the appropriate tools for mental health. And this goes back to our entire track of congruent depression. that a lot of what makes people depressed is not actually a mental illness. It's just that's the vocabulary we use now. And with the decrease in religiosity, like religion used to handle that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it handled it well. That's up for debate. It's not my area of expertise. But if we look at what religion tried to do, it tried to give people meaning and purpose. And so I think with the decline of religiosity, we're sort of having to come up with more secular versions of finding purpose and meaning in life, which is totally fine. I think it's great. And so this is what we call spirituality, right? It's not tied to a particular religious tradition, but it's still doing this work of like finding like what you mean in the world and why you're here. And I think those discussions are incredibly important. So the future of mental health, I think we're screwed unless we leverage everything we've got, because this is the raid boss. It's like the challenge of our generation, that mental health is getting worse. And in order to really fight this battle, we have to use everything. We have to use the internet. We have to use community. We have to expand our thinking of mental health. We have to use physiology, because right now, 90% of our clinical workforce, when it comes to therapy and supporting your mental health, know nothing about physiology. They have no formal training in the body, in inflammation, in the HPA axis, in brain-gut health. They have no formal training in it. And we're going to need to use everything that we have at our disposal. So, but I think we can handle it. And Healthy Gamer has really given me confidence that we can handle it if we work together. Great question. Okay, and I think now we're on to our last question, which is, oh, that was the last one. Okay, great. Okay, so, chat. So Rohack asks, what kind of work are you doing to make this kind of treatment more affordable? Literally, that's all of the work we're doing at Healthy Gamer. I don't know if you guys know this, but like, you know, the average cost for an appointment is going to be like anywhere from, you know, $80 to like $500. And so like at Healthy Gamer, like we recognize that mental health care, like the whole reason we started this organization is because mental health care is too old, too expensive, and too damn slow. It's not customized at all. There's no like data behind it. Like, and so our goal is to make things like affordable and accessible and personalized. That's what we're about. So. Okay. Yeah, that's what we're about. So thank you guys for all of your support. You know, I think that we're moving as fast as we can. And so 2020 was really about launching our coaching program. 2021 is going to be about like equipping you guys with some of these resources. Do we know it's going to work? I don't know. Do I have faith? Absolutely. But it's ultimately y'all that decide, right? You guys tell us. So we're an organization that's like driven by y'all. It's like when I hear these questions about, oh, you know, how do I learn advanced meditation? How do I do this? How do I do that? You know, that's really what I'm kind of focused on. And so you guys tell us what works and what doesn't. And this week, couple of other things. So I think we're back to streaming 3 days a week. So we may have guests and stuff on again. We really, really appreciate all of y'all that have participated in the community in some way and like subscribed or donated. All that financial support is awesome. But also like posting questions on Reddit, posting questions on Discord. I think it's really awesome because like the more stuff you guys put out there, the more stuff like people can start helping you. And I think one of the best ways, you know, is to give and receive help. That's what a big part of our group coaching is about. Is like, you guys all have a shared problem. Let's work on it together. It's all about AoE and partying up because life isn't a single player game. It's multiplayer. So without further ado, let's figure out who we're rating, chattars. XP sharing. Absolutely. There's an XP bonus when we do things together. Yeah, so Dale Boy said, stop drinking and smoking weed in the last few months. For me, that was a huge step for fixing my mental health. Absolutely, man. Ludwig? PPMD? Ludwig poggers or PPMD poggers? What do you think? Chattars. Let me see. Okay. Okay, we're gonna raid. We'll raid PPMD. He seems to be smaller, and dude, Ludwig has like 70,000 viewers right now. So as much as we love Ludwig, seriously, the dude is tops, man. The guy's like awesome. Really huge amounts of respect for Ludwig. So we'll think about raiding him next time. Okay. Thank you guys very much.